History consists of events, but people create it. We owe the conditions and quality of our life to the human endeavors of the past, just as the prospects for the future depend on our actions and work. Testimony of such a fruitful encounter of vision and achievement is clearly seen in the 308 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity that have flowed from the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations since March the 7th, 1970, when the 210 megawatt block first went into operation, till the 30th anniversary that we are now marking with this story. The first stage of construction works on the Obrenovac thermal power plant on the right bank of the river Sava, 30 kilometers upstream from Belgrade, in July 1967, signaled the launching of one of our country's biggest building ventures. The decision to build the Obrenovac thermal power plant, initially planned to have 5 200-megawatt blocks, was made in the early 60s, thanks to a group of engineers with vision headed by Bogoljub Urošević, Crni. Thus, well before the oil shock of the early 70s, the foundations were laid to rely on domestic energy sources for industrial development. This transformed Serbia, until then a net importer of electricity, into an exporter with the strongest electric power industry in the former Yugoslavia. Parallel to plant and auxiliary facilities, a railway transport system was built which, prior to its main purpose of transporting coal, was first of all used to deliver the major part of the equipment for the assembly of production installations. Despite frequent serious financial setbacks, construction proceeded according to and even improving on world standards of efficiency. Pioneer enthusiasm, training the labor force involved as the work progressed, the day and night battle to meet deadlines soon dispersed any doubts as to whether domestic forces were able to master such an ambitious project. Only 33 months elapsed from the first bucket of earth on the excavator till the first kilowatt hour. 6 months later, the second block of 210 megawatts was already connected into the system, thereby completing the first stage in the construction of the Obrenovac thermal power plant. I believe we've finished the power plant just as swiftly as they do in the industrially developed countries. Credit for this goes to all our workers, and commendation both to the builders and the investors. I thank them all for their efforts. While the new biggest thermal power station in the country proved its reliability and the advantages of the concept it represented, Bogoljub Urošević went a step farther by raising the power of the future blocks to 300 megawatts. The goal was unchanged: economic construction and lowering production costs to get cheaper electricity. After a 2-year interval, the contractors again appeared on the scene at the electric power plant. With the experience they had gained, construction was easier and safer. Nevertheless, the vision remained of further development, and even then designs were worked out for the construction of the B power plant, with double the output of its predecessor, again with Urošević beating the path for its realization. The third block was linked to the network on September the 10th, 1976. Of course, the honor of cutting the ribbon went to Crni, who, while the block was being assembled the preceding year, was forced for health reasons to hand over his duties as the organization's #1 man to his closest associate, Vladislav Mochnik. However, the construction site was spreading all around. Next came new blocks and everything needed to accompany the expansion of production facilities. Block 4 was installed in the network on April the 8th, 1978, and the 5th and 6th generator by the end of the following year, within a span of only 3 months, at the time considered to be an impossible feat. The Obrenovac giant was finished and proudly bears the name of the renowned scientist Nikola Tesla. The choice was made by the collective. While work on location A was in full swing in the autumn of 1977, a new building site opened. at Vorbis, some 20 kilometers upstream, on soil that was unsuitable for farming. The contours of a new electric power station were already being defined, another giant planned to grow to 4 times 620 megawatts. The rich experience acquired in building the A electricity plant ensured the new plant's top quality with its performance, which was soon to be demonstrated. A multitude of spectacular feats were carried out, like mounting the cooling pump installations brought up the river to the building site. The blocks were built using state-of-the-art methods in what were then the world's biggest units, burning low-calorie lignite. A giant 280-meter-high chimney with electric dust separators filters 99.8% of the dust, reducing atmospheric pollution to a minimum. For the first time, transformers of a power of 725 megavolt amperes were produced in our country. It was the first time that domestic builders had seen a boiler of such dimensions, 140 meters high. This was another powerful stimulus for promoting the manufacturing capacities of Yugoslav industry, building contractors and engineering designers who, together with the foreign equipment suppliers, carried off this grandiose undertaking. More power was installed in the Yugoslav electrical power system on November the 3rd, 1983. The builders celebrated the completion of this venture, and there was much to celebrate. Due to illness, Bogoljub Urošević was unable to attend, but he was nearing the fulfillment of his dream. Work was already well ahead on Block 2. The experienced teams managed to finish construction 7 months before the original deadline, and this aggregate was linked into the network just 2 years later. It resolved the energy crisis in Yugoslavia at the start of the 80s, at least where electricity was concerned, for another decade. The 8 blocks of the Obrenovac coal-fired power plants, totaling a power of 2,890 megawatts, became one of the most reliable pillars of the Yugoslav electrical power system. This flourishing trend was unfortunately cut short at that point before the builders finished all the planned works, due to a decision to stop the construction of the 3rd and 4th block and transfer the investments to the Kolubara B thermal power station's heating plant. A powerful and modern railway transport system grew alongside of the production facilities, which, from 1969 till today, has transported 445 million tons of Kolubara coal. The railway, with approximately 100 kilometers of tracks, is one of the busiest in Europe, transporting 167 gross registered tons per day. The heat from the coal in the powerful aggregates of the Nikola Tesla thermal power stations is transformed into the cleanest energy, electricity. In order to improve the people's living standard, meet ecological standards, and make the maximum use of heat, the reconstruction of the 2 oldest blocks of the Nikola Tesla A thermal power plant in 1983 made it possible to use them for the central heating regime. By constructing a long-distance heating system, over 150 million kilowatt-hours of heat was supplied for heating Obrenovac. Maximum attention is devoted to reducing environmental pollution and overcoming all the harmful effects of the production process on the quality of the air, water, and soil in the vicinity. Time inevitably brings changes. Radoslav Mihailović was appointed managing director in 1988, replacing Vladislav Mochnik, who went into a well-deserved retirement. Next came a period of stabilization in the work of the already rounded-off capacities of our biggest thermal power plants. The sacrifice, discipline, and responsible approach to work demonstrated during the construction period remained a habit and the prime quality of this collective in the plant's exploitation. The spirit is imprinted on the nearly 1.1 million hours of operation of these 8 blocks in the electrical power system. The efficiency of this operation is best illustrated in the fact that in this period their output has been 15 billion kilowatt hours over and above the production balance, which is equal to the annual production results of this giant. From the beginning of 1992, the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations have done business as part of the public enterprise of the same name. They're incorporated together with the Kolubara Veliki Crljeni, the Morava in Svilajnac, and the Kolubara B under construction in Kalinic. The Kolubara A is the oldest active thermal electric power plant in Serbia. It started operating way back in 1956, and at that time its two generators of 32 megawatts each were the biggest thermal power units in the Serbian electrical power industry. By 1979, another 3 blocks had been added, of 32, 65 and 110 megawatts, which have so far supplied 37 billion kilowatt hours of electricity, operating together considerably over 1 million hours on the network. The Morava thermal electric power station was built on the perimeter of the area where there are coal mines, with a stake in using the smallest fractions of coal from these mines. It uses all the 9 types of this fuel of different calorific values. Its installations cover operation loads, and its block with a power of 125 megawatts is balanced for working 6 months of the higher season when required. Despite this, since 1970 till today, it has been in operation nearly 5,000 hours annually, and with more than 13 billion kilowatt hours, has provided a significant share in the overall production of electricity in the electrical power industry of Serbia. The Kolubara B thermal electric power and heating plant is one of the development priorities in the Yugoslav energy industry in the forthcoming period. When it is finished, the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations will have 2 more blocks of 350 megawatts of electricity each and 380 megawatts of heating power each for supplying long-distance heating to Belgrade. In its new organizational form, this enterprise continues the tradition that was born in the vision of its founders. Heading the enterprise since 1997 is the board of directors, headed by Managing Director Dragan Jovanovic. Today, the collective has 4,000 employees, 11% of them with university or college degrees, and 75% of them skilled and highly skilled technicians. With the administrative board, it successfully carries out the extremely difficult task of preserving the place and role of the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations in the electrical power system, in the deteriorated conditions of operation and business. The living standard and the improvement of working conditions for employees occupies an important place in this enterprise's business policy. Meals, fares, and regular health protection are provided for employees in all segments of the enterprise. There is also a long tradition of supplying detailed information to the employees and the broader public on all important issues regarding the enterprise's work and business dealings. With the construction and purchase of apartments, the housing question of more than 1,700 employees has been resolved. The enterprise also has 300 beds available in hotels and rest homes. The company is one of the chief developers of community infrastructure and raising the quality of life for the population in the neighborhood of its plants. In 30 years of operation of the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations, something happened that no one could have expected. This company, too, was the target of the NATO war machine, which brutally destroyed the distribution and transmission installations and plants of the Nikola Tesla A and Kolubara thermal electric power plants. But it only briefly interrupted the stable flow of their production. During the air raids, the employees demonstrated a high level of expertise, sacrifice, technical knowledge and organization, making an enormous contribution to the country's defense and the preservation of the people's basic living conditions. The consequences of the devastating attacks were repaired in an extremely short time, so that even before the winter season began, they were ready to resume production and supply half of the electricity in the electrical power industry of Serbia. The results achieved in 3 decades of production are a stable foundation for this company to enter the 3rd millennium. The new challenges will be to revitalize the installations, carry out the long-distance heating project for Belgrade, continue the construction of the Kolubara B thermal electric power station, and, why not, complete the Nikola Tesla B thermal electric power plant. In getting ready for the future, serious headway is being made to promote the quality of business in keeping with the standards of the ISO 9000 series. Power, efficiency, reliability, and an orientation to development demonstrated in the course of 30 years of production will remain enduring features of the image of the Nikola Tesla thermal electric power stations and the public enterprise with which they constitute the energy core of our country.